Good day, everyone. First, let me introduce myself. I am Elizabeth Ramos from Group 4. As you're aware of the teaching lessoning for comprehension to acquisition, here is the continuation of the topic. Recommended lesson structure when teaching lessoning for comprehension. The free lessoning, while lessoning, and post lessoning. Free lessoning. Its purpose is to help students prepare for what they are going to hear, which will give them a greater chance of success in any test. In free lessoning, it is important to set context. According to Colley and Gakimick, year 1980, listeners had to report back what they had heard, but proved totally incapable of understanding the sentence. Example, in Mad else are, in Clay none are. Relevance shows that without a clear context, connected speech often becomes inaccessible. After setting context, then create motivation. The activities are activate schemata to help predict content, generate interest in the topic, teach lexical items, and set up a reason to lesson. While listening, students interact with the text to improve their listening skills. Extensive listening, general questions on context and attitude of speakers. The focus in extensive listening is not form. The goal is not to understand each and every part of a given audio or video recording, or analyzing what you hear for specific learning points. Rather, your objective is to get a broad understanding of what you hear and to simply enjoy what you're listening to. Phrased tasks or phrased questions. Success in listening is measured by correct responses to questions or tasks. Intensive listening. Slow, careful listening for short, difficult audio clips. You're focusing more on form than on overall meaning, because the goal of the listening is to pay attention to pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. And last, checking answers. Ask students for their answers and tell them whether they are right or wrong. Post listening represents a follow up to the listening activity and aims to utilize the knowledge gained from listening for the development of other skills such as speaking or writing. In post listening, we'll do examining functional language. Functional language is language that you need in different day to day situations. For example, asking for or giving advice. Also, we'll do inferring vocabulary meaning. The following are the post-listening activities. Checking and summarizing. It assess student understanding of the text. Discussion. Opportunities for comments and personalization. Creative responses. Involve both writing and speaking. Critical responses. Awareness of the speaker's viewpoint, biases, and prejudices. Information exchange, share information, problem solving, listing, sorting, ranking, ordering, solving, deconstructing the listening text, play short segments of the text, focuses on salient features, and last, reconstructing the listening text, provide fragments of the text, have students put back together. Now let's move on to listening for language learning. Listening for language learning is based on the role of noticing in language learning. So, what is noticing? Noticing is regarded as an important part of the process of learning new language, especially in acquisition, driving accounts of language learning. When learners at some point in their acquisition notice their errors in production. Noticing will only occur when the learner is ready to take on the new language. The following are the assumptions about the noticing hypothesis. Noticing hypothesis is a theory within second language acquisition that a learner cannot continue advancing their language abilities or group linguistic features unless they consciously notice the input. The theory was proposed by Richard Schmid in 1990. Key concepts. Input refers to all the target language that the learner reads and hears. Intake refers to the part of input which the learner comprehends and acts on to develop his or her internal grammar of the target language and its rules of use. Input plus active noticing becomes intake. Restructuring is the process by which learners change their interlanguage systems. And monitoring is the conscious attending of learners to their non-language output. New language is acquired if first noticed in the input. A bottom-up approach to listening. Noticing is facilitated by input at the appropriate level of difficulty. Notice items become acquired items through practice. Acquiring involves restructuring. Without restructuring, the result is facilization. Activities that stretch learners' language facilitate restructuring or further learning. Returning to the listening text that serve as the basis for comprehension activities. And using listening text for language awareness. Here are the examples of noticing activities. Learners identify differences between what they hear and a printed version of the text. Complete a clause version of the text. Complete sentence themes taken from the text. Check off from a less expression that occurred in the text. Sorting a text from a jumbled version and pair dictation. Turning on to the restructuring activities. Restructuring activities are oral or written tasks that involve productive use of selective items from the listening text. Examples of restructuring activities: conversational text, peer reading of the tape scripts, written sentence completion tasks, use expressions and other linguistic items from the text, dialogue practice based on dialogues that incorporate items from the text, role plays, SSU scale language from the text. And now the two-part strategy. The two-part strategy is recommended when there is a connection between listening and speaking skills. Phase 1: Listening as Comprehension. Listening as comprehension is the traditional way of thinking about the nature of listening. This view of listening is based on the assumption that the main function of listening in second language learning is to facilitate understanding of spoken discourse. Phase 2: Listening as Language Learning. Language learning is impossible without listening skills. This is because there is no communication where there is no human interaction. And lastly, the following are the principles for teaching listening. First, teach rather than test. Second, prepare SS for listening and for the listening text. Third, good listeners use appropriate listening strategies. Fourth, teach listening for pleasure and listening to learn. And lastly, listening activities should be purposeful. That ends our report, and thank you for listening.